What would you do if the world decided you were guilty before you even had a chance to speak? Imagine sitting in a park, waiting for your little brother, when suddenly a group of men surround you, not just to intimidate, but to remind you that you don't belong. What happens when standing your ground turns into a fight for your life? And what if, even after defending yourself, the police arrive and they only see you as the problem? This is Jamal's story, a story about injustice, resilience, and the power of truth. Stay until the end. You won't believe what happens next. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from today. If you believe in fighting for justice, hit that like button and subscribe to Inspiring Stories Told so you never miss another powerful story. Let's stand together because some stories deserve to be heard. The evening air in Lincoln Park, Missouri, was thick with the scent of freshly cut grass, mingled with the warm breeze of early summer. The golden glow of the setting sun bathed the park in an amber hue, stretching long shadows across the ground. Laughter and the rhythmic sounds of soccer balls being kicked across the field filled the air, mingling with the rustling of leaves overhead. Families spread out across the picnic tables, children chased each other near the jungle gym, and joggers weaved through the paved trails, earbuds in, lost in their own worlds. Jamal Carter sat alone on a weathered wooden bench beneath a towering oak tree, his back straight, posture relaxed, but his mind alert. A thick novel rested open in his lap, the well-worn pages flipping gently in the breeze. He wasn't just reading, he was waiting. His younger brother, Malik, was finishing up soccer practice, and Jamal had promised their mother he'd walk him home safely. Dressed in a crisp white button-up, dark slacks, and polished shoes, Jamal stood out among the other teens scattered around the park in their shorts and sneakers. He didn't mind. His mother had always told him, "Dress the way you want to be treated." And so he did. The evening should have remained peaceful, uneventful. But trouble has a way of finding people like Jamal, whether they look for it or not. The distant roar of motorcycle engines cut through the tranquil evening, sharp and intrusive. The sound grew louder, approaching like a storm rolling in. Jamal looked up from his book, his sharp eyes scanning the park's entrance. 5 bikers rumbled in, their motorcycles slicing through the peaceful atmosphere like a knife. Their presence was immediate, overwhelming, thick leather jackets, ripped jeans, heavy boots. They weren't just passing through. No. They parked their bikes near the soccer field, engines still growling, their eyes scanning the park like predators searching for prey. Jamal's stomach clenched. His instincts, honed through years of being hyper-aware of his surroundings, screamed at him, "This isn't right." And then he locked eyes with Dean Walker, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a square jaw and piercing blue eyes. Dean looked at him the way a man looks at something he wants to break. There was no mistaking it. Hatred, curiosity, and the thrill of intimidation burned behind his gaze. Jamal had seen that look before. For a moment, the world around him seemed to slow. Jamal let out a slow breath, shifting his gaze back to his book, forcing himself to remain calm, unreadable, unbothered. If there was one thing he'd learned growing up, it was that people like Dean fed off fear. They enjoyed making people shrink, making them feel small. But Jamal wasn't small. A burst of laughter and hurried footsteps pulled Jamal from his thoughts. Malik sprinted toward him, still breathless from his game, his soccer cleats scuffing against the pavement. His face was glowing with excitement, his jersey slightly damp with sweat. "Yo, Jamal, you should have seen me. I scored the last goal. I was on fire." Malik beamed, his youthful energy completely unaware of the tension hanging in the air. Jamal smiled, ruffling his little brother's short curls. "Yeah? Sounds like you put in work. Coach said I might be team captain next season," Malik added, practically bouncing with pride. But Jamal's attention was split. His eyes flicked back toward the bikers, and his chest tightened. They were still watching him. The moment Malik arrived, their interest sharpened. Jamal's gut twisted. No, not Malik. Leave him out of this. He stood, tucking his book under his arm. "Come on, man, let's head home." As Jamal and Malik turned to leave, the bikers moved too. Deliberately, purposefully. They spread out, cutting off their exit path, their bodies forming a wall of leather and muscle. Dean stood at the center, his arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips. Jamal stopped walking. Malik, sensing his brother's shift in demeanor, stiffened beside him. "Something wrong?" Jamal asked, his voice even. Dean tilted his head, eyes gleaming with amusement. "Yeah, actually." He glanced around the park. "We were just talking, this place has changed a lot." "Huh?" "Different crowd these days." Jamal felt the words under the words. Different crowd. He forced himself to remain calm, even as his pulse quickened. "It's a public park," Jamal said simply. "We're just heading home." Dean's smirk widened. "Yeah? You sure about that?" Jamal exhaled slowly, keeping his expression unreadable. "We don't want trouble." Dean chuckled, nudging one of his men. "Hear that, boys? They don't want trouble." The other bikers grinned. "But see, thing is," Dean continued, stepping closer, "this park? It ain't really your kind of place, is it?" There it was. Undeniable. Unfiltered. Jamal's jaw tightened, but he didn't react. He had two choices. Try to push through them and risk escalation. Find another way out, but show them weakness. Neither option was ideal, but before he could decide, Dean's hand shot out, grabbing Malik by the wrist. Malik let out a startled yelp, his body jerking in response. Jamal's entire world shrank to that single moment. The sound of Malik's breath hitching, the way Dean's fingers tightened, the sharp shift in the biker's stance. A surge of pure, unfiltered rage surged through Jamal's chest, but he forced it down. Control. Discipline. He lifted his gaze, locking onto Dean's with deadly precision. "Let him go." Dean smirked, his grip still firm. "Nah," he said casually. "I think maybe we should have a little lesson. Show you how things work round here." The world around them faded, the laughter of children, the faint music from a distant radio, the hum of the city just beyond the park. No one stepped in to help. Jamal's fingers curled into fists. The trap was set, and Jamal knew this was only the beginning. The tension is thick, the danger is real, and Jamal stands at a crossroads, fight or suffer the consequences. His little brother is in the hands of a man who sees him as nothing more than an easy target. The crowd stays silent, the air crackles with unspoken hostility, and Jamal's pulse pounds like a war drum. What would you do in his place? Are you feeling the anger? The fear? The frustration of injustice? Do you want to see what happens next? Press 1 to continue the story. Press 0 if you think we should stop. Let us know. Jamal's breath was steady, his expression unreadable. But inside, a fire raged. Malik was still trapped in Dean's grip, his small wrist swallowed by the man's thick fingers. The way Malik squirmed, his breath hitching, his eyes wide and brimming with panic, it ignited something in Jamal that he fought hard to suppress. "Let him go." Jamal's voice was low, controlled. Dean tilted his head, the smirk never leaving his face. The other bikers snickered behind him, their postures relaxed, confident. They had done this before. They enjoyed this. Or what? Dean drawled, tightening his grip. Malik winced. Jamal's fingers curled into fists. His pulse pounded, but he didn't move. Not yet. Dean leaned in slightly, his breath foul with the stench of cigarettes and cheap beer. "See, I don't think you get it, boy. People like you. You don't tell people like me what to do." The word boy sliced through Jamal like a blade. It wasn't just an insult. It was a statement. A challenge. A reminder of how the world saw him. Malik struggled harder. "Jamal," then it happened. Dean's hand shot across Malik's face, the sharp crack of skin against skin ringing through the park like a gunshot. Malik crumpled to the ground, his cheek already swelling, his lips split open. The world snapped into focus. Jamal's vision blurred with red-hot rage. There was no more thinking, no more waiting. His body moved before his mind could stop it. With a speed that caught even the bikers off guard, Jamal twisted toward Dean, his muscles coiling like a spring. 1 second, Dean stood there smirking. The next, Jamal's fist rocketed forward, striking him square in the jaw. Dean staggered back, stunned. The bikers froze, blinking in shock. They had expected Jamal to cower, to run. Not this. But Jamal wasn't done. Dean barely had time to recover before Jamal spun, his leg whipping through the air in a flawless roundhouse kick. The impact sent Dean stumbling, crashing to one knee. The park held its breath. Then chaos erupted. Two bikers lunged at Jamal, their faces twisted with rage. Jamal dodged the first swing, shifting effortlessly. The second attacker's fist came flying, a brutal, clumsy punch, but Jamal sidestepped, grabbing the man's arm and flipping him over his shoulder. The biker hit the ground with a sickening thud, groaning in pain. The gang wasn't laughing anymore. Jamal exhaled, rolling his shoulders. He knew he was outnumbered, but it didn't matter. He wouldn't let them touch Malik again. Briggs, the largest of the group, rushed forward, swinging wildly. Jamal ducked, his movements sharp, controlled, years of training guiding him. He countered with a swift kick to the side of Briggs' knee. The man held, dropping to the ground. Another biker charged, grabbing Jamal from behind in a bear hug, squeezing hard. Jamal gasped, his ribs screaming in protest. He planted his feet, twisted sharply, and drove his elbow into the man's ribs. A second. A third. The biker's grip loosened, and Jamal freed himself with a ruthless knee to the stomach. But he was losing time. More were coming. Before Jamal could regain his footing, a fist slammed into his ribs from behind. He barely registered the pain before a second punch landed, a brutal, crushing blow to his back. Jamal stumbled forward, gritting his teeth against the sharp burst of agony. Briggs was back on his feet, wiping blood from his mouth. His eyes burned with fury. "You're dead, boy," he snarled. Jamal steadied himself, his breath shallow. His body was already aching, but he couldn't afford to slow down. Malik was still on the ground, dazed. He had to keep fighting. A slow, cruel chuckle rose above the chaos. Dean, now standing again, wiped his bleeding lip with the back of his hand. His expression had changed. No more mocking smirk. Now he was furious. And then he pulled out a steel chain. The crowd that had gathered gasped. Jamal's stomach dropped. Dean gripped the heavy links, swinging them slowly, testing the weight. Jamal had fought plenty before, but not against a weapon. He barely had time to think before Dean lashed out. The chain whipped through the air, slamming into Jamal's ribs. Pain exploded across his side. His breath hitched. His vision blurred for a second. He fell to one knee. The crowd murmured, uneasy. But still, no one stepped forward. "Leave him alone." Malik, eyes blazing, scrambled to his feet and rushed at Dean. Jamal's heart lurched. "Malik, no." Dean turned, his boot connected with Malik's stomach, sending him flying backward. Malik landed hard, the breath knocked from his lungs. Something inside Jamal snapped. No more. Ignoring the searing pain in his ribs, he pushed off the ground, charging toward Dean. The biker swung the chain again, but this time, Jamal anticipated it. He dodged, stepped in close, and grabbed Dean's wrist in a vice grip. The shock on Dean's face was almost satisfying before Jamal twisted the wrist, forcing the chain from his grip. Jamal was about to finish him. The sharp wail of police sirens ripped through the air. The fight halted. The bikers backed up slightly, panting, bruised, but still standing. Jamal held his breath, his hands clenched into fists, his chest heaving. Finally, the police were here. Someone must have called them. Relief flooded through him until he saw the patrol car doors swing open. Officer Greg Mitchell stepped out, his gaze locking onto Jamal instantly. His hand went in his holster. Jamal froze. "No, no, no, no. Get on the ground." Jamal barely registered the command before Mitchell drew his gun, aimed directly at him. Not at Dean, not at the bikers. Just at him. The onlookers gasped, some pulling out their phones, but no one spoke up. Dean wiped his chin, smiling through blood-stained teeth. Jamal saw it in his eyes. The trap had worked. Jamal fought for his life, for his brother's safety. But now? Now he's the one with a gun in his face. Malik is still on the ground, barely able to breathe. The bikers? They get to walk away. Jamal is faced with an impossible choice: comply or risk never seeing his family again. What will happen next? Press 1 to continue. The weight of the gun trained on his chest felt heavier than the pain radiating through his ribs. Jamal froze. His breath came in shallow, Ragged gasps as his arms hovered in the air, his muscles trembling from the fight. The adrenaline still surged through him. But this was different. The bikers stood behind him, bruised but grinning, their smug expressions cutting deeper than any wound. Dean wiped blood from his mouth, his eyes glinting with satisfaction. The trap had been set perfectly, and Jamal had walked right into it. Get on the ground. Now. Officer Greg Mitchell's voice thundered, his gun unwavering, his stance rigid. Jamal slowly lowered to his knees, the gravel biting into his palms as he pressed them against the ground. His chest burned where Dean's chain had struck him, his side throbbed where fists had landed, but none of it compared to the humiliation clawing at his insides. This wasn't just about the fight anymore. This was about power, about control, and no matter how hard he fought, the world had already decided he was guilty. Malik's choked sobs cut through the night air. Stop, please. Malik's voice cracked as he scrambled forward, trying to reach his brother. His small hands grasped Jamal's shirt, but before he could do anything more, a firm hand yanked him back. A bystander. A stranger. But not an ally. Stay out of this, kid, the man muttered, holding Malik at a distance. Jamal looked up, meeting his little brother's terrified gaze. It was the first time he had ever seen true fear in Malik's eyes. And then came the final blow. He jumped us, Dean groaned dramatically, pressing a hand to his ribs. The audacity. The performance. He came out of nowhere, Briggs added, shaking his head. We were just minding our business, and he attacked us like some rabid animal. Jamal squeezed his eyes shut, fury mixing with helplessness in his chest. The lies slid off their tongues so smoothly, so easily, and Mitchell believed them instantly. The cold steel of the handcuffs snapped around Jamal's wrists, tight and unforgiving. Mitchell yanked him up roughly, sending another wave of pain through his battered body. Jamal winced, but he didn't make a sound. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction. As the officer shoved him forward, Jamal felt the burn of humiliation, not just from the injustice unfolding, but from the people around him. The bystanders. The silent crowd. The ones who had watched everything, who had seen the truth, yet said nothing. Their eyes avoided him now. The same people who had gasped in horror when Dean had first grabbed Malik. The same people who had recorded the fight on their phones, capturing the moment Jamal was forced to defend himself. And yet, here he was, the only one in cuffs. Malik broke free from the man holding him, his small body hurling toward them. No. He didn't do anything. He was protecting me. Malik screamed, voice raw, his fist pounding against Mitchell's side. The officer barely flinched. Back off, kid. Mitchell's tone was cold, detached, like Malik wasn't even human. Jamal turned his head slightly, his voice hoarse but firm. Malik, go home. No. Malik shouted through his tears. They're lying. Why won't you listen? Why won't you listen? The question hung in the air like a ghost. Jamal knew the answer. He had always known. The truth didn't matter. Not when it was his truth. Dean took a slow step forward, rubbing his bruised jaw. Then he leaned in, so close Jamal could smell the sweat and blood on his breath. And he whispered, I told you this wasn't your place. Jamal's fingernails dug into his palms so hard they nearly broke skin. The words stung more than any punch, any chain, any gun pointed at his chest. This was never about the fight. This was about reminding him who held the power. The realization settled into Jamal's bones, cold and bitter. The police car door swung open, the interior swallowing him whole. Mitchell shoved him inside without care, slamming the door shut as if sealing a casket. The weight of it all crashed down on him. The rage, the exhaustion, the injustice. How did it always end like this? The inside of the police car smelled like sweat and metal. Jamal leaned his head back against the seat, closing his eyes. He could still hear Malik's voice, screaming for someone to help. But no one did. No one ever did. The blaring of sirens faded, replaced by the sharp screech of tires pulling up fast. A car door slammed. Then, a voice, fierce, commanding, and unmistakable. Lisa Carter. Jamal's mother. Where's my son? Jamal's eyes snapped open. Outside, Lisa marched onto the scene, her stance rigid with fury. She moved with the kind of energy that made grown men step aside. Mitchell turned, lips pressed into a thin line. "Ma'am, I need you to calm down." "Calm down." Lisa's voice shook the air itself. "You put my son in handcuffs while the real criminals stand there grinning?" Dean smirked, crossing his arms. Lisa's eyes cut toward him. "Wipe that smug look off your face, you disgusting excuse for a man." Dean actually took a step back. Jamal, watching through the car window, felt something inside him shift. He had fought with his fists. But his mother? She fought with fire. And then Mitchell's radio crackled. A voice on the other end, urgent, sharp. "Let the kid go. Now." Mitchell's expression shifted. And for the first time that night, Jamal saw fear in his eyes. What was in that call? Who just saved Jamal from a fate worse than this? Will Lisa Carter get justice for her son? Or is this just the beginning of a bigger war? And most importantly, will Dean and his gang walk away free? What comes next? Press 1 to find out. The tension in the air was electric, thick with unspoken rage and brewing justice. Lisa Carter stood her ground, her breath steady but controlled, like a lioness preparing to strike. Inside the police car, Jamal could barely move, barely breathe. His wrists throbbed where the cuffs dug into his skin, his ribs ached from the beating, and exhaustion settled in his bones. But all of that paled in comparison to the humiliation eating away at him. He had been here before, not in this exact situation, but in this feeling. That feeling of being powerless, unheard, disregarded. But then, the voice on the radio had come through. And something shifted. Lisa's voice was sharp as a blade as she faced Officer Greg Mitchell, who was now hesitating for the first time that night. "I'm going to say this once. My son is innocent. Those men," she pointed directly at Dean and his gang, who were still standing there with smug expressions, "are criminals. And if you don't uncuff my son this instant, you will regret it." Mitchell scoffed, trying to regain his composure. "Ma'am, I suggest you calm down before I have you removed." Lisa pulled out her phone. "Greg, do you know who I just called?" she said, her voice eerily calm. The officer faltered. "Greg." She had said his first name. Lisa let that sink in before continuing. "My brother." Mitchell's brow furrowed, but he didn't say anything. Lisa's smile was razor-sharp. "You know, Charles Monroe? The civil rights attorney? The one currently sitting on the governor's advisory board?" "Yeah, him." Mitchell's face drained of color. Lisa pressed the speaker button on her phone. The deep, authoritative voice of Charles Monroe filled the air. "Officer, let my nephew go." Mitchell stammered. "Sir, uncuff him." Charles's voice was cold, unforgiving. "I just got off the phone with the mayor. If my nephew isn't free in the next 5 minutes, you'll be on administrative leave by morning." Mitchell's jaw tightened. His eyes darted around, searching for an escape, an excuse, but there wasn't one. Lisa folded her arms, her gaze unwavering. "Do it," she ordered. With shaky hands, Mitchell reached down and unlocked Jamal's cuffs. The metal fell away, but the scars of the moment remained. Jamal rubbed his wrists, breathing deeply, but he didn't stand up just yet. He turned his gaze toward Dean. The man was still smirking, still radiating that same arrogance that said he thought he'd won. Not yet. Just as Jamal was about to stand, a voice from the crowd shattered the silence. "I recorded everything." Heads turned. A young woman, barely in her 20s, stepped forward, holding up her phone. "I saw what really happened," she said, her voice firm. "And so did everyone else." She wasn't alone. One by one, people in the crowd lifted their phones, proving they had been recording too. Mitchell swallowed hard. The truth was out. Lisa's lips curved into a knowing smirk. "So, officer, what's your excuse now?" Mitchell had no words. And then, the moment of reckoning came. A second police vehicle pulled up. This time, the officers weren't looking at Jamal. They were looking at Dean and his gang. The lead officer stepped out, glancing at Lisa, then at Mitchell. "What's going on here?" Lisa didn't wait for Mitchell to speak. She pointed directly at Dean. "These men assaulted my son. They attacked him first. And now, the whole country is about to know." The officer's eyes flicked toward the growing crowd, to the raised phones, to the undeniable proof. His expression darkened. Dean Walker, Briggs, Vince, hands behind your backs. For the first time that night, Dean's smirk slipped. What? You've got to be kidding me, he snarled. The officer wasn't kidding. Within seconds, the cuffs that had once been on Jamal now clicked shut around Dean's wrists. The video hit social media within minutes. First, it was a few hundred shares. Then, a few thousand. By the next morning, millions. The footage of Jamal's wrongful arrest, Malik's desperate screams, Dean's racial harassment, and the moment of justice spread across news channels. The town erupted. Protests formed outside the police department, demanding change. News anchors exposed Dean's long criminal history, linking him to past assaults that had been swept under the rug. And Mitchell? Placed under investigation for misconduct. The next day, Jamal stood outside the police station, breathing in the fresh air. He wasn't just free. He was victorious. Malik ran up, throwing his arms around his waist. You're okay, Malik whispered. Jamal ruffled his hair, finally letting out a soft chuckle. Yeah, little man. I'm okay. Lisa placed a hand on Jamal's shoulder, her expression proud yet tired. You fought the right way, she said. Jamal looked down at Malik, then back at his mother. And for the first time since that night in the park, he smiled. Jamal's story is more than just a fight in a park. It's a reflection of a much bigger battle, a battle against racism, against injustice, and against the silence that allows oppression to thrive. What happened to Jamal could happen to anyone. It could happen to your brother, your son, your friend. And too often, it does. But here's the truth. The system only wins when we let it. What if no one had recorded that video? What if Lisa hadn't fought back? What if Jamal had been thrown into the system and forgotten? The reality is, for so many people, that's exactly what happens. They don't get a mother like Lisa to fight for them. They don't get a high-powered attorney uncle. They don't get a crowd willing to hold up their phones and expose the truth. They get buried in a system designed to break them. So what's the lesson here? The lesson is this: silence is complicity. Every time we see injustice and say nothing, every time we look away, we are part of the problem. Standing up doesn't always mean throwing a punch. It means using your voice. It means demanding the truth. It means refusing to let injustice go unchallenged. Jamal didn't win this fight because he was the strongest. He won because the truth was undeniable and people finally chose to see it. But the truth is, it shouldn't take viral videos and national outrage for justice to be served. We shouldn't have to wait until someone is on the ground, bruised and bleeding, before we decide to care. We shouldn't have to beg for basic humanity. That's why this fight isn't just Jamal's. It's all of ours. So ask yourself, would you have stepped in? Would you have stood by, watching Jamal get handcuffed? Or would you have spoken up? Would you have looked away, afraid to get involved? Or would you have lifted your phone, made noise, demanded answers? Because next time, it might not be Jamal. Next time, it could be someone you love. And that's why we need you. This story isn't just a story. It's a movement. If you believe in standing up for what's right, if you believe in fighting for justice, then show it. Like this video to support Jamal's story, share it to spread the message, and subscribe so you never miss another powerful story like this one. We tell these stories because they matter, because we refuse to stay silent, because someone, somewhere, right now, is living this reality. Don't let their voices go unheard. Stand with us. Subscribe, share, and be part of the fight for justice. Because the world doesn't change on its own. We have to make it change.